The Atlanta sky was radiant on that June morning, with golden sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows of First Ebenezer Church, where Maya Jackson was about to step into a new chapter of her life. Maya, a 28-year-old African-American woman, stood in front of the mirror in the bridal preparation room, her deep brown eyes shimmering, as if reflecting the whole world. Her pure white wedding dress, meticulously tailored to flatter her full figure, embraced every curve like a declaration of confidence. Tiny pearls on her veil sparkled with every movement, casting a soft, gentle glow around her. Maya smiled at her reflection, her heart pounding with anticipation. Today, she would become the wife of Ethan Carter, the man she had loved for the past 3 years, and nothing could dim that joy. The preparation room was filled with laughter and warm blessings. Maya's sister Aisha carefully adjusted her veil, chatting non-stop about their childhood memories. "Remember when you insisted on wearing Mom's wedding dress and running around the house?" Aisha teased, her eyes glowing with pride. "Look at you now, like a princess." Maya laughed, warmth spreading through her chest. Her mother, Lorraine, sat quietly on a velvet chair nearby, discreetly wiping away a tear of happiness. "You are my pride, Maya," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "This is your day, and I know you'll have a wonderful marriage." Maya held her mother's hand, feeling the warmth of the fingers that had nurtured her through the years. She thought about the journey that had led her to this moment. As a freelance graphic designer, Maya had always lived with creative passion, but her love for Ethan made her life complete. They met at a charity event at Georgia State University, where Ethan, with his blonde hair and confident smile, had captivated her at first glance. He was an investment banker, always impeccably dressed, and full of humorous stories that made everyone around him laugh. Ethan made Maya feel special in the early days, with romantic sunset dates and sweet handwritten notes left on her desk. But not everything had been perfect. In recent months, Maya has noticed subtle changes in Ethan's behavior. Offhand comments about her weight like, "You should try this new diet," or, "That dress looks a little tight, doesn't it, though?" Said with a smile, she had begun to chip away at her confidence. Maya, who had always been proud of her body, started spending more time in front of the mirror, wondering if she was truly enough for him. Yet every time she voiced her insecurities, Ethan would hug her and say, "I want you to be healthy, Maya. I love you." She believed him, or at least she wanted to. Their wedding day, she told herself, would erase every doubt. Today, Ethan would stand before her in front of family and friends and vow to love her forever. Outside the preparation room, the organ began to play. The soft melody of Canon in D filled the church. Maya took a deep breath, her heartbeat syncing with the rhythm. Aisha touched her shoulder and whispered, "It's time, sweetheart. Are you ready?" Maya nodded, her radiant smile returning. She exited the room, clutching her bouquet of white carnations, prepared to face the future. The church doors opened, revealing rows of guests, familiar faces, and welcoming smiles. Light from the stained glass windows bathed the aisle, creating a dazzling path to the altar where Ethan stood waiting. In a sleek black suit, Ethan Carter stood tall beside the pastor. He was the image of the perfect groom, tall, with neatly combed blonde hair and blue eyes sparkling with confidence. But as Maya drew closer, she noticed something in his eyes, a strange glint, not entirely of love, but more like anticipation, for a moment he had been preparing for. She pushed the thought away, convincing herself it was just wedding day nerves. When she finally stood before him, Ethan smiled, but that smile no longer warmed her as it once did. The pastor began the ceremony, his deep voice echoing, "We are gathered here today to witness the union of Maya Jackson and Ethan Carter." The crowd fell silent, all eyes fixed on the couple. Maya looked at Ethan, her heart full of hope. She imagined the vows he would say, the promises of a shared future of waking up together each morning and building dreams side by side. She had no idea that everything she believed in would come crashing down in just a few minutes, and that this wedding day, the one meant to mark the beginning of happiness, would become the harshest trial of her life. But at this moment, beneath the gentle light of the church, Maya Jackson was still a glowing bride, ready to give her heart away, unaware that Ethan's following words would change everything. As the gentle light from the stained glass windows of First Ebenezer Church cast a glow on Maya Jackson's pristine white wedding dress, she stood at the altar, her heart pounding with hope and unease. Ethan Carter, the groom in his sleek black suit, smiled at her, but the smile no longer brought the sense of safety it once did. Maya tried to brush off the unsettling feeling, telling herself it was just wedding day nerves. But to truly understand this moment just before all her dreams would shatter, we must go back in time to the love story that brought her here. A story that once burned bright, but was slowly clouded by fractures too deep to ignore. Maya and Ethan met 3 years earlier at a charity event hosted by Georgia State University. At the time, Maya was a 25-year-old freelance graphic designer standing in the corner of the room, holding a glass of lemonade and observing the crowd. She stood out with her naturally curly hair tied high and a warm smile, though a hint of shyness lingered among unfamiliar faces. Ethan, a 27-year-old investment banker, approached with the confidence of someone used to drawing attention. He was tall, his blonde hair glowing under the lights, and his blue eyes sparkled with mischief. "Did you know your smile lights up this whole room?" he said, his deep voice tinged with playful charm. Maya laughed, her awkwardness melting away. That was the moment it all began. The early months of their relationship were a whirlwind of romance. Ethan surprised Maya with spontaneous dates, like a picnic under the starlit sky in Piedmont Park, or dancing at a small jazz lounge in Midtown. He would leave short notes on her desk with words like, "You're the best part of my day." Maya, always proud of her independence and creative passion, felt her heart open like never before. Ethan wasn't just a boyfriend. He was someone who made her believe she was worthy of unconditional love, no matter who she was. A full-figured black woman living in a world that could be harsh to women like her. But as the relationship deepened, cracks began to show. After about a year, Ethan became increasingly busy with work, and romantic dates became rare. Maya didn't mind. She understood his pressures and always tried to be a supportive partner. However, what troubled her were the subtle but sharp comments Ethan began making, especially about her appearance. One evening when Maya tried on a new dress for one of Ethan's corporate events, he looked at her and said with a half smile, "You look nice, but maybe you should start hitting the gym with me. It'll be good for you, right?" Maya forced a smile, feeling as if a small needle had pricked her pride. She told herself he was only concerned for her health, but deep down, she knew those words weren't harmless. Such remarks became more frequent. When Maya proudly shared a design project she had worked on, Ethan might cut in with, "That's great, but have you thought about losing some weight to feel more confident presenting it?" Or when they dined out with friends, he'd joke, "Maya, you don't need dessert tonight, do you?" The people around them laughed, and Maya laughed too. But each time a piece of the confidence she'd built over the years eroded. As a black woman, Maya was used to dealing with societal biases about her body, but she hadn't expected the man she loved to become one of the voices that made her doubt herself. Maya had tried to express her hurt to Ethan. One night, after he made another joke about her weight in front of friends, she pulled him aside and said, "Ethan, what you said hurt me. I don't find it funny." Ethan frowned as if she were making too big a deal out of it. "Come on, Maya, I was kidding. You know I love you. Why are you being so sensitive?" He hugged her, and at that moment, Maya wanted to believe he meant no harm. She blamed herself for overreacting, telling herself that love meant accepting each other's flaws. But the insecurity grew like a dark cloud hovering over her happiness. Maya's family and friends began to notice the change as well. Aisha, her older sister, once warned Maya, "Are you sure about Ethan? He doesn't respect you the way he should." But with her heart full of hope, Maya brushed off the concerns. She loved Ethan and believed he loved her just in his way. When Ethan proposed under the sparkling lights of the Jackson Street Bridge one evening, Maya cried with joy. She envisioned a future where they would overcome everything together, where Ethan would become the man she had once seen in their early days. Their wedding day, she thought, would be the ultimate proof of their love, washing away all doubts and confirming that Ethan truly cherished her. Now, standing at the altar, Maya looked into Ethan's eyes, searching for the warmth she had once seen at the beginning of their love story. But his gaze felt distant, as if he were playing a role instead of living the moment. The pastor continued his speech, his deep voice resonating through the church. "Today we bear witness to the union of two souls." Maya gripped her bouquet of white carnations tighter, trying to focus on the pastor's words. But a part of her couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, something that would change everything. She didn't know that just seconds from now, Ethan's words would not be vows of devotion, but razor-sharp confessions that would shred her dream of a happy marriage. First, Ebenezer Church was wrapped in a sacred stillness as the pastor raised his hand, signaling Maya Jackson and Ethan Carter to begin their vows. In her pristine white wedding gown, hugging her full figure, Maya stood tall, her deep brown eyes shimmering with hope. Light from the stained glass windows poured over her, forming a radiant halo around her, as if the universe was blessing this moment. She clutched her bouquet of white carnations, feeling her heart pound. Though the hurtful comments Ethan had made in the past still lingered faintly in her mind, Maya believed that today, in front of family and friends, he would prove his love with words of sincerity. She smiled gently, ready to listen. With his neatly combed blonde hair and sharp black suit, Ethan stepped forward, a strange glint in his blue eyes. Not the warmth of love, but the confidence of someone about to deliver a performance rehearsed well in advance. The crowd fell silent, familiar faces from both families turning toward the couple, awaiting the promises that would bind them forever. The pastor nodded to Ethan and said, "Ethan, you may begin." Ethan cleared his throat, the smile on his face widening, but there was something in how he stood, shoulders raised slightly, chin lifted high, that sent a chill down Maya's spine. Ethan began, his voice deep and clear, echoing through the hushed church. "Today, in front of everyone, I want to say that you are exceptional." Maya smiled, her heart warming. But then Ethan's tone shifted, laced with a hint of mockery. "It was so special that when I first met you, I thought, this girl needs a gym bigger than our love." A few chuckles rippled through the crowd, but Maya's smile froze. She glanced at her sister Aisha in the front row and saw her brows knit tightly together. Ethan continued, seemingly unaware or intentionally ignoring the tension rising in Maya's expression. "Maya, you're the heaviest bride I've ever seen in every sense of the word." He emphasized heaviest with a wink toward the audience. This time the laughter grew louder, but uneven. Some laughed loudly, while others, like Maya's mother Lorraine, sat frozen. Her hand clenched tightly around her handkerchief. Maya felt her cheeks flush, not from joy, but from a rising wave of shame. She kept her gaze on Ethan, hoping he'd shift into something sweeter, but he seemed to relish the moment. "And I've got to say," Ethan went on, increasingly smug, "when we picked out the wedding dress, I was honestly worried we'd need a few extra yards of fabric to cover all of you." The crowd laughed again, But now the laughter had an uneasy edge, as if they realized the jokes had gone too far. Maya felt her bouquet trembling in her grip, her fingers clenching so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She stared at Ethan, searching for some sign that he was trying to entertain, that he'd soon pivot to something tender to soften the wounds he was inflicting. But his eyes never met hers. They scanned the crowd as if he were performing for them, not for her. Each of Ethan's words landed like a blade, cutting deep into the self-worth Maya had spent years building. As a black woman, she was no stranger to judgmental glances and whispered comments about her body in a society obsessed with unrealistic standards. But she had never imagined that the man she loved, the one who once wrote her letters calling her his light, would turn her into the punchline of a public joke in front of those she loved most. She looked toward Lorraine and saw her mother bow her head, shoulders trembling. Aisha gripped her mother's hand beside her, eyes cold and locked on Ethan. In the row behind them, Maya's best friend Keisha shook her head, muttering something under her breath. But Ethan didn't stop. "But seriously, Maya," he said, feigning a thoughtful tone. "I love you, because you always fill the room, both in my heart and our apartment." That line drew loud laughter from a group of Ethan's friends seated toward the back, but the rest of the church fell into a heavy silence. Maya felt her breath grow shallow, as if the air in the room was pressing down her chest. She wanted to say something to interrupt him, but her throat was dry and her feet felt nailed to the floor. Sensing the tension, the pastor cleared his throat and said, "Ethan, perhaps you'd like to share something more heartfelt about your love." But Ethan shrugged, the grin still plastered on his face. "Oh, Reverend, I just wanted to lighten the mood. Maya gets it right, babe." He turned to Maya for the first time, looking directly at her. But his eyes held no remorse or affection, only challenge, as if daring her to smile along and prove she could take a joke. Maya did not smile. She stood there, her eyes brimming with tears, but she bit her lip to keep them from falling. In that moment, she realized a painful truth. The man standing before her was no longer the Ethan she once loved, the one who made her feel like the center of the universe. This was someone else willing to turn her deepest insecurities into public entertainment, with no regard for her breaking heart. The awkward laughter of the crowd echoed in her ears like a cruel soundtrack, but it couldn't drown out the quiet voice rising in her mind. "You don't deserve this." She looked at Ethan, his eyes still locked on hers, waiting for a reaction. And in that instant, a spark of resolve ignited within Maya. She didn't know what she would do next, but she knew one thing with absolute clarity. She could not stand there another second, allowing his words to keep tearing her apart. Her hand loosened. The bouquet fell gently to the floor, and with a trembling breath, she prepared for a decision that would change everything. The air inside First Ebenezer Church seemed to freeze when Maya Jackson's bouquet of white carnations hit the floor, a soft sound that echoed through the heavy silence. Radiant in her wedding gown, Maya stood at the altar, her deep brown eyes glistening with tears, yet her chin remained lifted. The cruel words spoken by Ethan Carter, cutting jokes about her weight and appearance disguised as humor, still rang in her ears, each one a razor slicing through the self-worth she had built over the years. The crowd, who had once chuckled at Ethan's remarks, now sat in an awkward hush, their eyes darting between confusion and pity. Maya felt her cheeks burn, as though every gaze in the church was scorching her. She glanced toward the front row where her mother Lorraine sat trembling, her handkerchief clenched so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Beside her, Maya's sister Aisha stared at Ethan with eyes so sharp they could ignite flames. Maya's best friend Keisha, seated further back, was halfway to her feet, ready to storm the altar to protect her. But it was the presence of these loved ones, those who had witnessed her dream wedding, unravel into a spectacle that deepened Maya's pain. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, the day she and Ethan promised each other forever. Now, it was merely a stage for humiliation. Ethan, still standing before her, wore his smug smile undisturbed. He shrugged as though his words had been harmless banter. "Come on, Maya. You know I'm just joking," he said casually, his tone laced with an unspoken dare. He tilted his head, waiting for her to smile, to play the part of the cheerful bride who could take a joke. But Maya couldn't smile. Her breathing grew heavier, as if the air in the church was pressing against her chest. Every awkward chuckle from the crowd, every sympathetic glance, was a brutal reminder that she was being exposed, made into a public spectacle, as a black woman. Maya was no stranger to harsh judgments about her body. She had learned to love herself, to hold her head high against whispered comments and lingering stares in clothing stores, gyms, or even on social media. But Ethan's betrayal was a different kind of pain. This wasn't a stranger. She loved this man, the man who had once held her close and promised to cherish her forever. The handwritten letters the night spent dreaming about the future, all of it now felt like a script he'd rehearsed to bring her to this moment, where he turned her into the punchline of a cruel joke before those she loved most. She looked at Ethan, searching for even a flicker of remorse in his blue eyes. But all she found was self-satisfaction. There was no apology, no recognition that his words had shattered her heart. Instead, he turned to the crowd, raising a hand like an actor awaiting applause. "See, my Maya has the best sense of humor," he declared, drawing a few strained laughs from his group of friends at the back. But most of the crowd remained silent, discomfort spreading like an invisible wave. Standing nearby, the pastor cleared his throat, clearly uneasy with how the ceremony had unfolded. He said gently that we should move forward with the bride's vows, his voice layered with meaning. But Maya couldn't continue. She felt smaller every second she remained at the altar facing Ethan and the crowd. Ethan's words hadn't just hurt her. They had made her question herself, her worth, and whether she was truly lovable. She thought of the past few months, when Ethan began slipping in those comments about her weight, and how she had convinced herself they came from a place of concern. She had ignored the warning signs, choosing to believe in his love. But now the truth was clear as day. Ethan didn't love her the way she deserved to be loved. A small but firm voice echoed in Maya's mind. "You don't have to endure this." Though quiet, it carried a strength she had never realized before. She looked down at her wedding dress, which she had chosen with so much joy and hope, and understood it wasn't just a gown. It symbolized the dignity she still possessed, despite Ethan's insults. She breathed deeply, her chest expanding, as if reclaiming the air Ethan had stolen from her. The crowd began to murmur, whispers spreading, as they realized Maya was not responding. Aisha stood from the front pew, her eyes worried, but full of support. Lorraine raised her tear-filled gaze, a quiet strength shining through. Keisha, still in the back, grasped the hand of the friend beside her and whispered, "She can't let him keep doing this." Maya could feel their presence like invisible arms wrapping around her. They weren't laughing with Ethan, they were hurting with her, and that gave her the strength to face the ache gripping her chest. She looked at Ethan again, and this time her eyes were no longer pleading or wounded. They were firm, resolute, as if she were seeing through him to the truth beneath the surface, a man unworthy of the love she had offered. Her hand, once clenched in pain, slowly relaxed. She knew that if she stayed and allowed Ethan to continue, as if nothing had happened, she would lose a part of herself, the part she had fought so hard to love and protect. With a trembling breath, Maya bit her lip to hold back tears. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her actions would speak for her. She turned slowly, but with purpose, leaving Ethan and the altar behind. The whispers in the crowd swelled into a wave of sound, but Maya didn't hear them. All she felt was the beat of her heart louder and stronger than ever, reminding her that she was still alive and whole and had the power to reclaim herself. First Ebenezer Church sat in suffocating silence as Maya Jackson turned away from the altar, leaving Ethan Carter and his cruel, mocking words behind. Her pure white wedding gown, once a symbol of hope and love, flowed with every step, like a proud flag declaring the dignity she was determined to uphold. The crowd, which had chuckled awkwardly at Ethan's jokes only moments ago, now held its breath, their eyes wavering between shock and pity. Maya could feel those stares like tiny needles pricking her back, but she didn't stop. Every step was a silent declaration she would not be reduced to a punchline. She would not accept a future with a man who had turned her wedding day into a stage for her humiliation. Ethan remained at the altar, the smug smile on his lips slowly fading. "Maya, what are you doing?" he called after her, his voice tinged with panic, but still laced with a performative charm. "Come on, get back here. We're not finished." But Maya didn't look back. His voice, once a source of comfort in the early days of love, now felt distant, hollow, stripped of its power to anchor her. She stepped past the fallen bouquet of white carnations, the stained glass light from above forming a radiant path, guiding her out of this nightmare. Whispers began to ripple through the church, soft murmurs swelling like waves. In the front row, Maya's sister Aisha stood abruptly, gripping their mother's hand, Lorraine, who was hurriedly wiping away tears. "Go, baby," Lorraine whispered, her voice choked with emotion, yet full of faith. Maya's best friend Keisha gave a soft clap from the back row, a silent gesture of support. But not everyone approved. A few of Ethan's friends shook their heads. One murmured, "She's being dramatic." Maya heard it, but she didn't flinch. She knew this wasn't just about leaving Ethan. It was about reclaiming the parts of herself she had lost during the months of his quiet cruelty. Maya pushed through the door to the bridal room, the same room where just hours before she had laughed with Aisha and her mother, brimming with hope for a happy marriage. Now it had become a temporary refuge where she could face the storm of emotions rising inside her. She closed the door behind her, and the noise of the church faded, replaced by a heavy silence. Maya leaned back against the door, her breathing unsteady. She looked down at her gown, the once sparkling pearls now seeming to mock a dream that had crumbled. Her hand trembled as she touched her veil, and finally, unable to contain it any longer, she slid to the floor, her dress fanning like a broken white cloud. In the solitude of that room, the pain she had tried so hard to suppress came flooding out. Ethan's words, "The heaviest bride," a few extra yards of fabric reverberated in her head, each one a jagged blade slicing through her sense of worth. As a black woman, Maya had grown used to enduring judgmental stares and unrealistic beauty standards. She had learned to love her body, to hold her head high in the face of whispers in dressing rooms or cruel online comments. But Ethan's betrayal was a deeper wound, because it came from someone she loved, someone she had believed would honor her unconditionally. She recalled the recent months when Ethan had started dropping casual comments about her weight and how she had convinced herself they came from care. She had ignored the red flags and chosen to believe in his love. But now, the truth was undeniable. Ethan hadn't just disrespected her. He had deliberately wounded her, and done so in front of the very people she cherished most. Tears streamed down Maya's cheeks, but they weren't only tears of pain. They were tears of awakening, of a realization that she deserved better, that she deserved love rooted in respect, not ridicule. Maya wiped her tears, her breath slowly evening out. She stood up and looked into the mirror. Her face, still wet with sorrow, now held a strength she hadn't known she possessed. She thought of her mother who had raised her and Aisha through countless hardships, of Aisha who always reminded her she was stronger than she thought. "You don't need him," Maya whispered to herself, the words quiet but steady. She removed the veil, placing it gently on the table, as if shedding the last remnants of a broken dream. The wedding dress still clung to her body, but now it wasn't a symbol of her bond to Ethan. It was a symbol of the freedom she was claiming back. A gentle knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. A part of her wanted to ignore it, to linger a little longer in this solitude. But another part, stronger now, urged her to open it. That maybe, just maybe, something beyond this pain was waiting. Maya took a deep breath, smoothed her dress, and opened the door. Standing before her was a woman she'd only glimpsed in the crowd, Diane Brooks, an acquaintance of her mother's, whose eyes were filled with compassion and something more, resolve. Diane didn't speak right away. She looked at Maya, as if seeing something far greater than the heartbreak that had just unfolded. "Maya," Diane finally said, her voice low and warm, "I saw what happened, and I'm here to tell you, you are not just a bride who's been hurt. You are a strong woman, and I believe you have a story worth telling." Maya frowned slightly, not yet understanding Diane's meaning. But the look in the woman's eyes, complete of belief, not pity, stirred something inside her. She didn't yet know that this painful moment would begin her rebirth, a journey where she would find the strength to redefine herself. The door to the bridal room closed softly behind Maya Jackson, sealing off the whispers and echoes from First Ebenezer Church, where she had just walked away from the altar, and from Ethan Carter, along with his cruel, humiliating words. In her now creased white wedding gown, Maya leaned against the door, her breath still shaky. Just hours ago, this room had been filled with laughter and blessings from her sister Aisha and her mother Lorraine. Now it felt like a lonely shelter where she faced the shattered remnants of a wedding dream. The tears on her cheeks had dried, but her heart still felt heavy, as if Ethan's words, "heavy bride, extra yards of fabric," were pressing down on her chest. She looked into the mirror and saw a woman who was both strong and wounded, wondering if she could ever find herself again after everything that had just happened. A gentle knock broke the silence. Maya hesitated. Part of her wanted to stay here in the pain, let it drown her just a little longer. But the same quiet voice that had urged her to walk away from the altar now whispered that maybe something was waiting on the other side of that door. She took a deep breath, adjusted her gown, and opened it. Standing before her was Diane Brooks, a woman in her early 50s with salt and pepper hair pulled back neatly and eyes full of compassion, but not pity. Diane, whom Maya had only glimpsed briefly among the guests, carried a grounding presence, almost like she brought quiet energy strong enough to pierce through the darkness. "Maya," Diane said in a calm, firm voice. "May I come in?" Maya nodded, still unsure why this woman was there. Diane stepped inside, closed the door, and scanned the room before her gaze settled on Maya. "I saw what happened out there," she said plainly. "And I want you to know, I'm not here to comfort you as usual. I'm here because I saw something in you, something rare, a strength that shone through even in your most painful moment." Maya frowned. Diane's words swept through her like a strange wind. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice hoarse from crying. Diane smiled softly, sitting on the velvet chair where Lorraine had sat earlier. She motioned for Maya to sit across from her. "Let me reintroduce myself," she said. "I'm Diane Brooks. I'm a talent scout in the fashion industry, specializing in plus-size modeling. I know your mother, Lorraine. We've worked together on a few community projects in Atlanta. She invited me to your wedding today. But what I witnessed out there wasn't just a disrupted ceremony. I saw a woman with beauty, grace, and above all, resilience." Maya shook her head, struggling to accept the compliment. "You saw what Ethan said. Everyone laughed at me. I didn't feel strong. I felt humiliated. Diane leaned forward, locking eyes with her. They laughed because they didn't understand. But you, Maya stood there, faced cruelty, and chose to walk away. That's not a weakness. That's power. And strength can take you further than you realize. Diane pulled out a business card from her handbag and placed it on the table between them. I want to offer you an opportunity, she said. The plus-size fashion world is growing. We need women like you, not just because of your look, but your story, your spirit. I want to invite you to try modeling, to step into a world where diversity and self-confidence are celebrated, a world where you can tell your story on your terms. Maya looked down at the card. It read, Diane Brooks, Talent Scout Horizon Modeling Agency, in bold letters. A storm of emotion swirled inside her. On one hand, Diane's offer felt like a beam of light in the suffocating dark, a chance to breathe again. But on the other hand, she couldn't shake the shame Ethan's words had planted. I'm not a model, she said quietly but firmly. I'm a graphic designer. I don't know anything about runways or cameras, and after today, I'm not sure I can stand in front of anyone anymore. Diane didn't argue. She stood, walked to Maya, and gently touched her shoulder. Maya, I won't pretend this path is easy. There will be days when you doubt yourself, days when criticism cuts deep. But I've been in this industry long enough to tell you the people who create real change are the ones who rise after pain. You don't have to decide now. But consider this today, you walked away from someone who didn't value you. That was your first step. The next step can be whatever you want it to be. Diane's words lit a small fire inside Maya. She thought of her mother who had raised her through hardship, always teaching her that failure didn't define her, but how she got back up did. She thought of Aisha, who constantly reminded her she was stronger than she realized. And she thought of herself, a black woman who had learned to love her body despite society's impossible standards. Maybe, just maybe, Diane was right. Perhaps this was her chance to take control of her own story. Maya picked up the business card, her fingertips brushing the embossed letters. She looked up at Diane, her eyes no longer blurred with tears, but reflecting a flicker of resolve. I'll think about it, she said, her voice still trembling, but carrying newfound strength. Diane nodded, smiling. Good. I'll be waiting for your call, Maya. But I know whatever path you choose, you will do something incredible. With that, Diane left, closing the door gently behind her. Maya stood still, the card in her hand, her heart glowing with a small but fierce spark of hope. She didn't know where this opportunity might lead, but she didn't feel like a broken bride for the first time today. She felt like Maya Jackson, a woman ready to rewrite her story. The bridal room at First Ebenezer Church, where Maya Jackson once faced the pain of public humiliation at the hands of Ethan Carter, was now just a distant memory. 2 weeks had passed since that fateful wedding day, and Maya, still carrying the emotional scars of Ethan's betrayal, now stood at a crossroads. In her hand was the business card from Diane Brooks, the talent scout who had seen strength in her, even when she had felt her weakest. Diane's offer to try plus-size modeling was like a faint flame flickering in the dark, but it also forced Maya to confront some of her deepest fears: the fear of failure, judgment, and the haunting possibility that Ethan might have been right about her. Maya sat in her small Atlanta apartment, morning sunlight filtering through the blinds, illuminating the business card on her table. She had looked at it daily, her fingers brushing over the words, Horizon Modeling Agency, as if searching for courage in the ink. As a graphic designer, Maya was used to creating behind a screen, not standing in front of cameras or spotlights. She thought of the rejection she'd faced in her career, the judgmental stares at her curvy body, and Ethan's words, heavy bride, still echoing, making her wonder if she was firm enough to enter such a brutal industry. But then she remembered Diane's unwavering gaze and words that Maya had a story worth telling. She thought of her mother, Lorraine, who had raised her and Aisha through hardship, and of Aisha who had called her right after the wedding and said, "You're stronger than him, Maya. Don't let him define you." Those words combined with a growing urge to prove that she was not Ethan's victim finally pushed Maya to pick up the phone and call Diane. "I want to try," she said, her voice trembling but firm. On the other end, Diane smiled through her voice. "I knew you'd call, Maya. Come to my office on Monday. We'll get started." Monday came, and Maya stepped into the offices of Horizon Modeling Agency, a sleek building in downtown Atlanta with photos of models lining the walls. Diane greeted her with a warm hug and introduced her to a team of photographers and stylists. Her first test shoot was unfamiliar territory. Maya stood before the camera wearing a fitted teal dress, the flashbulbs almost blinding. The photographer Marcus asked her to pose, but her body felt stiff, as if her self-doubt from the wedding day was still wrapped around her shoulders. "Relax," Maya Marcus said gently. "Think of a moment when you felt powerful." Maya tried, but all she could summon were Ethan's jeers and the crowd's laughter. Her poses were awkward, her movements hesitant. After the shoot, Marcus shook his head slightly. He said, "You've got potential, but you've got to believe in yourself." Diane, standing nearby, added, "This is just the first step, Maya. This industry is harsh, but I know you can do it." Maya left the office feeling like she had failed. But instead of giving up, she chose to face her fears. She began training with a posing coach Diane recommended, learning to move naturally in front of the camera. She watched videos of plus-size modeling icons like Ashley Graham and Precious Lee, drawing inspiration from their bold confidence. Every evening she stood in front of her mirror, practicing poses and whispering, "You are beautiful. You are enough." Her second shoot a week later marked real progress. Maya walked into the studio in a radiant red robe, carrying a new energy. She thought of her mother and Lorraine's stories about overcoming bias to become a respected nurse. She thought of Aisha, who always reminded her she was a warrior. As the camera flashed, Maya smiled, not the forced, uncertain smile from her wedding day, but the smile of a woman reclaiming herself. Marcus nodded, visibly impressed. "There it is," he exclaimed. Diane, from the corner of the room, smiled proudly. But Maya's journey was not without setbacks. She was dismissed with cold efficiency at one casting for a major fashion brand. The casting director said, "You don't quite fit our image," glancing at her body with a disapproving eye. Maya walked out, crushed, her newly built confidence shaken. She called Aisha, her voice cracking. "I can't do this." Aisha, ever blunt and loving, replied, "Maya, they accepted you because you're not good enough. They reject you because they can't see beyond their limits. Keep going. You're going to make it." Those words and Diane's steady mentorship helped Maya rise again. She started journaling, writing down thoughts about her body healing and journey to self-love. With every shoot, every pose, she felt herself inching closer to the woman she was becoming. She learned to turn criticism into fuel, to see rejection as redirection. Slowly, she stopped hearing the laughter from that wedding day. She stopped seeing Ethan's smug expression. In their place, she saw herself a black woman, curvy, beautiful, and powerful. One morning, Diane called Maya into her office and handed her a photo from a recent shoot. In it, Maya stood confidently, eyes sparkling with strength, the bold red dress highlighting every curve. "This is you, Maya," Diane said. "This is the woman who's going to inspire millions." Maya looked at the photo. and a single hot tear slid down her cheek. But this time, it was a tear of pride. She knew her journey was only beginning, but for the first time, she felt she was on the right path. A path where she wouldn't just find herself, but redefine her worth. Spotlights flooded the runway at Atlanta Fashion Week as Maya Jackson walked with poise, wrapped in a shimmering gold sequin gown that celebrated every curve of her body. 6 months had passed since that fateful wedding day, when she walked away from the altar and Ethan Carter's cruel words, and 3 months since she had accepted Diane Brooks's offer to step into the world of plus-size modeling. Maya's every step on that runway wasn't just fashion, a declaration of confidence, resilience, and rebirth, from a heartbroken bride to an empowering icon. Just months earlier, Maya had been a hesitant graphic designer, frozen before a camera, paralyzed by the shame Ethan's ridicule had instilled in her. But with Diane's guidance, her family's encouragement, and her determination, she had overcome failed auditions, judgmental glances, and moments of crippling doubt. Now, as her natural curls bounced with each confident stride, and her deep brown eyes gleamed with pride, the crowd erupted into applause. Flashbulbs fired in rapid bursts, capturing the image of a woman who was not just beautiful, but powerful. A woman who had transformed pain into purpose. The journey to this moment had not been easy. After the first few photo shoots, where Maya began to learn how to love her body, she faced even more formidable challenges within the unforgiving fashion world. Once she was rejected from a major ad campaign with the vague explanation of being not commercially viable, a coded phrase suggesting her body didn't fit the brand's vision. But with her seasoned insight, Diane reminded her that such rejections said more about their limitations than hers. "Let them miss the chance to work with you," Diane told her. "You'll find the ones who see your worth." And Maya did. The breakthrough came when Horizon Modeling Agency sent her to audition for Empowerwear, an international plus-size fashion brand. Maya walked into the casting room, wearing a sleek black dress, her gaze unwavering. She didn't shrink from the spotlight or try to conceal her shape. Instead, she stood tall, smiled, and when asked, she shared her story. "I once thought I wasn't good enough, but I've learned to love myself. Now I want to help others do the same." The casting director, Carla, nodded, her eyes brightening. "That's the spirit we're looking for," she said. A week later, Maya received the call. She had been chosen as the face of Empowerwear's fall campaign. That campaign changed everything. Photos of Maya, draped in vibrant maxi dresses, fierce leather jackets, and radiant confidence, appeared in major fashion magazines like Vogue and Essence. One standout image, Maya in a bold red dress, standing in a strong pose, eyes locked with the camera, went viral across social media. The hashtag #MayaEmpowers surged in popularity. Fans, especially Black women with curvy bodies, long ignored by mainstream fashion, shared her story, calling her a flame of confidence and a game changer. Each night, Maya read the comments, feeling a warmth in her heart, a sense that she hadn't just reclaimed herself, but had become a beacon for those who once felt invisible. Beyond ad campaigns, Maya began walking major runways from Atlanta to New York. With each step, she carried the echoes of her journey from the tear-stained bridal room to this brilliant spotlight. She worked with celebrated designers who valued diversity and aimed to honor every kind of body. In one show, she emerged in a flowing white silk gown, reminiscent of a wedding dress. Except now it wasn't a symbol of sorrow, but of freedom and triumph. The crowd rose in ovation, and Maya felt something come full circle. That white dress no longer haunted her. It empowered her. Diane, who had seen Maya's potential from the start, had become more than a mentor. She was a friend, a guide, and a protector of Maya's worth. "You're not just a model," Diane once told her over lunch. You're a storyteller, and your story is changing how people see beauty." Maya nodded, understanding the weight of that truth. She began speaking at events, sharing her journey from a ruined wedding to rediscovering her confidence. At a body positivity conference standing before hundreds, Maya said, "I once thought I wasn't enough because of one man's words. But I've learned that my worth doesn't lie in someone else's eyes, but in how I choose to see myself." Maya's rise didn't stop at fashion. She became an inspiration for women who had long felt sidelined, especially Black women, who faced the double burden of racial and body-related prejudice. A teenage girl wrote to her that seeing Maya's Empowerwear photo helped her stop hating her body. A mother messaged thanking Maya for showing her daughter that beauty comes in many forms. Those messages brought Maya to tears, not of sorrow, but of joy, and of a growing understanding that her purpose was now bigger than her pain. As Maya took her final walk at Atlanta Fashion Week, her eyes scanned the crowd and landed on Diane, sitting proudly in the front row. Deep in her heart, the memory of her wedding day lingered, but it no longer stung. It had become a lesson, a turning point that had led her here. She ended her walk in a powerful stance, one hand on her hip, her gaze blazing with fire. The crowd roared, and Maya knew this wasn't just her success. It was a victory for everyone ever told they weren't enough. She had found her light, and she was ready to shine brighter than ever. Afternoon sunlight filtered through the windows of Maya Jackson's modest Atlanta apartment, illuminating framed photographs from her Empowerwear campaign on the wall. It had been 8 months since that heartbreaking wedding day, when Maya walked away from the altar and Ethan Carter's cruel insults, and 5 months since she had stepped into the world of plus-size modeling under the guidance of Diane Brooks. Now Maya was a rising model and a symbol of confidence and body positivity, her image gracing magazines, runways, and social media feeds. But fame brought the spotlight and stirred mixed reactions from family, friends, and society, forcing Maya to navigate both celebration and prejudice. Maya's family remained her most significant source of strength. Her mother, Lorraine, who once wept at her daughter's pain on the wedding day, now proudly displayed one of Maya's Empowerwear photos in the living room, telling guests, she turned pain into light. During a family dinner, Lorraine clasped Maya's hand and said, "I always knew you were strong, but you've gone beyond anything I imagined." Her sister Aisha, who had once warned Maya about Ethan, became her most fervent cheerleader. Aisha kept every article about Maya saved on her phone, and whenever Maya felt overwhelmed, she reminded her, "You're Maya Jackson, the woman who rose from the ashes. Don't forget that." However, not everyone in the family accepted Maya's transformation so easily. Aunt Ruth, a conservative voice, called after seeing a photo of Maya in a fitted dress on a magazine cover. "You're showing off your body like that," she said with judgment. "That's not how our family does things." Though hurt, Maya responded calmly, "I'm not showing off, Aunt Ruth. I'm honoring myself, and I hope one day you'll understand that." The conversation left a slight ache in Maya's heart, but it also taught her that even those we love can be bound by the social norms and body biases they've internalized. Reactions from Maya's friends were just as varied. Keisha, her best friend since high school, became an enthusiastic fan, constantly sharing Maya's posts with captions like, "My queen." But some old friends, especially those present at the wedding, kept their distance. One friend, Tanya, messaged her once to apologize for laughing at Ethan's jokes that day, but never reached out again, as if afraid to be associated with the scandal. Maya felt the sting of those lost connections, but she focused on those who celebrated her, like Keisha and Aisha, rather than chasing after relationships that no longer had meaning. Online, Maya's story spread like wildfire. The hashtag #MayaEmpowers became a rallying cry for thousands, particularly Black women and full-figured individuals. A young girl commented beneath one of Maya's photos, "You helped me stop hating my body. Thank you." A mother wrote, "My daughter wants to be a model because of you." These messages brought Maya to tears, reminding her that her journey was no longer just personal. It had become a mission. But not all feedback was kind. Anonymous accounts left cruel remarks calling her overconfident or not pretty enough to model. One particularly harsh comment read, "She's only famous because of her wedding drama. Nothing special." Though Maya tried to tune them out, the words still stung tiny needles that reopened wounds from that day at the altar. Her fame also attracted attention from the media. An article in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution hailed her as the new flame of plus-size fashion, detailing her path from a ruined wedding to runway success. But tabloids chose a different angle, focusing on the scandal, calling her the runaway bride and speculating about her private life. One piece even quoted Ethan, who declined to comment directly, but suggested Maya had overreacted at the wedding. Reading that, Maya felt her anger rise, but Diane reminded her, "Don't let them drag you back into the past. You're writing your future." Maya nodded. She wouldn't respond. Instead, she'd let her work and story speak for itself. One afternoon, while preparing for a new photo shoot, Maya received a message from the nonprofit Body Positive Alliance, inviting her to speak at a body positivity conference. She accepted. Standing before hundreds, she said, "I once believed I wasn't enough because of one person's words. But I've learned that beauty isn't something others define. It's something you find within yourself." The audience erupted in applause, and Maya felt a new kind of strength, the power to survive and inspire. Yet public acclaim brought new pressures. The expectation was always to be perfect and confident, even when Maya had days of self-doubt. In her journal, she wrote, "There are days I'm scared I'm not good enough, that people will see me the way Ethan did." But each time she reread fan letters, recalled Diane's encouragement, and felt the pride in her mother's voice. She reminded herself that her journey wasn't just about her. It was about those who saw in her a guiding light. As Maya reflected on her path, she realized that fame was not only glamour, it was responsibility. She had become a voice for the marginalized and was determined to keep going no matter the criticism or backlash. But deep down, she knew one challenge remained. She would have to face Ethan and the past he represented someday. She didn't know when or how, but she felt ready, not with resentment, but with the confidence of a woman who had found her light. Dim bar lights cast a tired glow across Ethan Carter's face, now gaunt and distant from the polished man who once stood at the altar of First Ebenezer Church mocking Maya Jackson before a silent crowd. Nearly a year had passed since that wedding, the day his cruel jokes calling Maya a heavy bride and ridiculing her appearance didn't just destroy her dream, but quietly unraveled his own life. Sitting alone at the bar, swirling a glass of whiskey, Ethan's once confident blue eyes were hollow. The smugness that once defined him had faded, replaced by loneliness and a dawning regret he could no longer outrun. That day when Maya turned her back at the altar, Ethan thought she was overreacting. He laughed, called out after her, and tried to play it all off as a joke. But the silence in the church and the cold stares from Maya's family erased the smile from his face. When Maya vanished into the bridal suite and the ceremony dissolved into chaos, even Ethan's friends looked uncertain. Some patted him on the back, blaming Maya's lack of humor, but most guests, including his own family, left in disappointment. His mother, Susan, shook her head and whispered, "You went too far, Ethan." Those quiet words were the first real fracture in his self-image. In the weeks that followed, the consequences became undeniable. As an investment banker who had spent years crafting a professional persona, Ethan was stunned to discover The wedding incident had spread throughout Atlanta. Colleagues whispered behind his back. Some even called him the cruel groom. One tabloid published the story with the headline, "Groom turns wedding into punchline. Bride walks out." Ethan tried to ignore it until a major client pulled out of a deal citing a preference not to work with someone so disrespectful. That was when Ethan realized this wasn't a simple misstep. It was a scar, one that would follow him. Online things were worse, as Maya's plus-size modeling career soared, and the hashtag #MayaEmpowers lit up social media. Ethan became the target of widespread criticism. Posts labeled him a bully and a man unworthy of Maya. Some even tracked down his LinkedIn profile, leaving comments urging him to apologize publicly. In a panic, Ethan tweeted a statement, "I was wrong to joke about Maya at the wedding. I never meant to hurt her." But the apology was swiftly called out as hollow. "You're not sorry for what you did." One reply read, "You're sorry you got caught." The backlash was so intense that Ethan deleted the post. But the damage had been done. He lost followers, and even the friends who had once laughed alongside him began to drift away. The worst part for Ethan was the isolation. His once tight circle stopped showing up. At one rare lunch meeting, his friend Mark looked him in the eye and said, "Ethan, you crossed a line. You didn't just hurt Maya, you made all of us look bad for laughing." Ethan tried to justify it, saying he just wanted to make the ceremony fun, but Mark shook his head. "Humor isn't making someone else feel small, man." That conversation forced Ethan to ask himself a question he had avoided for months. What was he trying to prove that day at the altar? Why did he turn the person he loved into a joke? That night, alone in his apartment, Ethan opened his laptop and typed Maya's name into a search bar. Photo after photo appeared: Maya on the runway, Maya in campaigns, Maya at body positivity panels. She looked radiant, powerful, and free. In one interview with Essence, Maya said, "I used to think I wasn't enough because of one person's words, but I've learned to love myself." Though she never named him, Ethan knew those words were about him. Something sharp twisted in his chest for the first time, not because he was being criticized, but because he realized the truth: he had lost a remarkable woman. And it was his own doing. Ethan's remorse didn't come immediately. At first, he was angry, blaming Maya for ruining his image by sharing her story. But as her star continued to rise, and his world became quieter and lonelier, he began to reflect. He remembered the early days of their relationship, how Maya made him laugh with her wit, how her warmth made him feel grounded. He remembered how she used to look at him like he was the best man in the world. And he remembered how often he'd made remarks about her weight, thinking they were harmless. He saw now the way her eyes dimmed a little more each time. He had chosen to ignore her pain. And at the altar, he had driven it to its limit. Ethan wasn't pure evil. He had grown up in a world where body shaming was disguised as banter, where confidence was built by diminishing others. But now, stripped of friends' respect and self-worth, he finally understood his jokes were never funny. They were cruel. And Maya had been the one to pay for them. He considered reaching out to apologize sincerely, but every time he picked up his phone, he hesitated. What could he possibly say? Would she even listen? Deep down, Ethan knew he didn't deserve her forgiveness. Staring into his whiskey glass, Ethan felt a hollowness he hadn't known before. He hadn't just lost Maya because she walked away. He lost her because he had never truly cherished her. Now, as she lit up the world, he was left in the dim shadow of his choices. One day, he knew they might cross paths again. And when that day came, he would have to face the truth. But for now, he could only sit with the consequences, learning the hard way that words can destroy not only someone else, but everything within yourself. Under the shimmering lights of a grand hall in downtown Atlanta, Maya Jackson stood before a familiar crowd. her heart pounding, not from fear, but from a powerful resolve. Nearly a year had passed since the wedding. That never was the day she had walked away from the altar and the cruel humiliation at the hands of Ethan Carter. Now Maya, a renowned plus-size model and symbol of self-love and body positivity, returned not as a victim, but as a woman who had reshaped her life. This ceremony, proposed by Ethan as a chance to renew vows and salvage his public image, was the stage Maya chose to reclaim her voice and close the painful chapter on her terms. The hall was tastefully adorned with twinkling string lights and white carnations evoking memories of last year's ceremony. The audience, family, friends, and a handful of reporters sat on velvet chairs, murmuring in anticipation. Ethan, dressed in a sleek gray suit, stood beside Maya, the smile on his face more strained than confident. 2 months earlier, he had sent a long email apologizing for his actions and proposing the ceremony to make things right. After many sleepless nights, Maya had agreed, but not to forgive or rekindle. She came to face Ethan to speak the truths left unsaid and to close the wound for good. The room quieted when the minister, different from the one at the original ceremony, stepped to the podium. He introduced the event as a moment to reaffirm love and respect. Ethan was invited to speak first. Clearing his throat, he scanned the crowd before meeting Maya's eyes. "Maya," he began, his voice low, "the confidence of old. Absent, I made a terrible mistake on our wedding day. I said things I shouldn't have, and I'm sorry. Today, I want to show I've changed and value you." His words were more sincere than his viral Twitter apology, but Maya noted what was missing. He was apologizing for being criticized, not for the pain he caused. Polite applause followed, but Maya remained silent, her gaze locked on Ethan. He was no longer the smug man who turned her into a punchline, yet she didn't see the depth of remorse she had hoped for. When the minister invited Maya to speak, she stepped forward in a fitted jade gown, the fabric hugging her body like armor forged from a year of hard-won confidence. She drew in a steadying breath, feeling the presence of her mother Lorraine and sister Aisha in the front row, their eyes beaming with belief. Keisha, her best friend, nodded from the back row. Maya knew this moment wasn't just for her. It was for anyone who someone else's words had ever crushed. "Thank you all for being here today." Maya began, her voice clear and ringing. "But I'm not here to renew vows. I'm here to reaffirm a truth about my journey, about my worth, and about what I deserve." The audience fell into silence, sensing the weight of her words. Standing just a few feet away, Ethan clenched his fists, his expression wavering. "At First Ebenezer Church, I stood before many of you a year ago, with hope in my heart. I believed I was stepping into a life built on love. But instead of love, I was met with ridicule. Ethan chose to mock me, my body, and worth in front of my family, friends, and strangers alike." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some lowered their heads, remembering the awkward laughter that day. Ethan flushed with shame, but Maya pressed on. "Those words didn't just hurt. They made me question myself, whether I was worthy of love. But I've learned something since then. My value doesn't lie in his words or anyone else's gaze. It lies in how I got back up, learned to love myself, and now help others do the same." She turned to Ethan, her expression not angry, but resolute. "Ethan, you once promised to cherish me, and instead, you chose cruelty. Today, you say you've changed. That's not for me to judge. I'm not here to forgive or validate you. I'm here to say I don't need your apology to move forward. I found my strength not because of you, but despite you." Her words cut like glass, not out of spite but truth. Ethan looked down, unable to meet her gaze. The room tensed. Some nodded in support. Others, especially Ethan's former friends, looked visibly uncomfortable. Maya continued, her voice unwavering. My journey in fashion taught me that narrow standards don't define beauty. It's confidence. It's courage. It's standing tall after being knocked down. I stand here today not to repeat vows to Ethan, but to make a vow to myself. I vow to live where I am respected, loved, and valued. Lorraine wiped away tears. Aisha smiled proudly. Keisha clapped first, sparking a growing wave of applause that filled the hall. Reporters scribbled furiously, knowing Maya's speech would make headlines by morning. Ethan, now pale, stood silently. He understood finally that no public ceremony could restore his image. Maya turned to him one last time, not with anger, but with release. She knew this moment wasn't about confronting Ethan, but about reclaiming her narrative and closing the door on pain so she could enter a new chapter of power. The opulent hall in Atlanta held its breath as Maya Jackson stood at the podium, her steady gaze sweeping over the crowd. Her jade gown shimmered beneath the lights, reflecting the confidence and strength she had forged over a year of personal transformation. This was not the vow renewal ceremony Ethan Carter had envisioned. It was the moment Maya would declare her independence, not just from Ethan, but from the pain, expectations, and judgments that had once bound her. Nearly a year after walking away from the altar and his cruel public humiliation, Maya stood here no longer as a broken bride, but as a woman who had rebuilt her life on her terms. Ethan stood a few steps behind her, pale, his clenched fists, a futile attempt to cling to some last fragment of dignity. Though more composed than his social media statement, his earlier apology had not moved Maya. She had spoken her truth clearly, that her worth was not tied to his words, that her strength was not despite him, but in defiance. The audience, family, friends, and press members sat in reverent silence, fully aware of the moment's weight. In the front row, her mother Lorraine held Aisha's hand, both women beaming with pride. Keisha, seated further back, smiled warmly, poised to cheer for the friend who had emerged from darkness radiant. Maya took a deep breath, and her voice rang out clear and unshakable, like a flame no one could extinguish. Today I do not stand before you to renew a broken promise. She began, her eyes passing over familiar faces, before resting momentarily on Ethan. I stand here to make a new vow, not to anyone else but myself. I vow to live where I am respected, loved, and valued for who I truly am, not for what someone else expects me to be. The crowd remained silent, yet the air trembled with emotion. Maya continued, her voice softer now, but weighted with sincerity. I stood in the First Ebenezer Church a year ago, hoping for a future built on love. But what I received instead were words meant to make me feel small. I walked away from that altar, not out of weakness, but because I knew I deserved better. My journey since then, from self-doubt in casting rooms to confidence on blazing runways, taught me that true strength lies not in pleasing others, but in loving yourself, even when the world tells you not to. She turned to Ethan, then not with hatred, but with release. Ethan, I'm not here to accuse you. I'm here to say I don't need you to feel whole. Your words once wounded me, yes, but they also set me on a path I never expected, a path where I became a symbol for anyone ever told they weren't enough. So instead of resentment, I thank you for inadvertently allowing me to meet the strongest version of myself. Ethan lowered his head, speechless. The glow of arrogance, once so characteristic of him, had vanished, replaced by the shadow of a man who realized the cost of his cruelty too late. Some of his former friends in the back row shifted uncomfortably, but most of the crowd, Maya's family, friends, and supporters, nodded, their eyes filled with admiration. A reporter scribbled furiously, already sensing the headlines that would dominate the morning news. Maya raised her voice, then every word like a hammer breaking the chains of the past. So today, in front of all of you, those who witnessed my pain and now my power. I declare my independence. There will be no vow renewal with Ethan. Instead, I sever all ties with someone who never truly cherished me. I choose a future where I define my worth. I live with pride and confidence that no one can ever take from me." She paused, eyes sweeping the room one final time as if etching this moment into their memory. "I walk away today, not with bitterness or regret, but with dignity and a heart wide open, ready to embrace a future where I am loved for exactly who I am." With those final words, Maya stepped down from the podium, her head held high, her gown shimmering like fire. Applause erupted, led by Aisha and Keisha, who stood cheering. Lorraine wiped away tears, her smile radiant with the pride of a mother who had watched her daughter triumph. Ethan remained alone at the front, his gaze vacant. He didn't call after her, didn't try to explain. He knew this moment wasn't just Maya's victory, but his defeat. Not because she rejected him, but because he had exiled himself through his cruelty. The crowd began to disperse, whispers filling the room like echoes, but Maya didn't hear them. She walked past the velvet chairs, locking eyes with Diane Brooks, whose belief had opened a door Maya never knew existed. She embraced her mother and sister, wrapped in the unconditional love that had carried her through. As Maya exited the hall, the Atlanta sun bathed her in light, as if welcoming a woman who had found her own. She didn't know what the future would hold, but she knew one thing for sure. She was Maya Jackson, a woman who turned pain into power, a model, a storyteller, and above all, a free woman. With each step she felt lighter. The past was behind her, before she stretched an open sky where she would continue to shine, inspire, and live the life she had always deserved.